Howdy YouTube, hope you're having a great day. A little late on getting this to you, but today I will be talking about Dune Part 2, which has been getting all sorts of rave reviews. And I'm here to tell you that it certainly lives up to the hype in my opinion. This should be kind of obvious, but you really need to see Part 1 first. It's sort of like the red wedding of the story as we see the massacre of House Atreides by the Harkonnens, their enemy for centuries. Now, I haven't read the books yet, and my first exposure to, the Dune story was actually the Iron Maiden song To Tame a Land. But while Part 1 had to, take time to introduce us to this galaxy set in the distant future, the story of Part 2 really gripped me as we finally get to play in the sand pit, so to speak. I'm just going to get this out of the way first. The movie is absolutely gorgeous to look at, and the cinematography was on point. Maybe it's just me, but I kind of had a hard time of hearing some of the dialogue in Part 1 when I saw it at the theaters, but I didn't have that problem here. And this certainly was not a cheap movie to make, as the budget was, I believe, $190 million. But we've had some bad movies with big budgets over the last few years, and I thought the money was well spent here, and they really used it well. You have these amazing wide shots, and you can still see the care that the crew did in making sure all these small details were clear. Besides all the shots of Arrakis and the sand and the huge worms that the franchise is famous for, there's a scene on A Different World where the suns there cause things to be black and white, which I thought looked really cool. And they also shot off some fireworks in celebration on this world, which looked like drops of paint in the sky. And I'm really interested in maybe seeing like a bonus feature on how they did some of these effects and kind of what was practical, what was CGI. Great job by all, and director Denis Villeneuve. I really enjoyed the side characters in this film, and as a whole it just seemed more lively than Part 1. Javier Bardem's Stilgar was great and added some humor that really wasn't in the first film. Not to say this was like a comedy or was full of forced jokes, but he was just kind of naturally funny. Probably due to this gag of him and his belief of Paul as the prophesied leader of the Fremen. And it might not have been intended, but I also kind of got a laugh at Dave Bautista's character, Rabin. He was basically like a jobber throughout the whole film. Christopher Walken as the Emperor was, I thought, an interesting choice just because of his style of acting. Fun fact, Christopher Walken was in a music video for a Fatboy Slim song that references Dune. Rebecca Ferguson, I thought, was fantastic, again, as Paul's mother. And her character goes through some drastic changes throughout the film that I'm not going to spoil here. Just know that I really enjoyed the direction they took her character. Austin Butler as Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen was another standout, and this performance will make people not see him as just Elvis anymore, but as a great actor in his own right. He plays this menacing psychopath who kills his own men for just the slightest of reasons, and he acts as a foil to Paul in that he's been trained his whole life and raised to be a leader for his people. However, he lacks Paul's empathy and seeks only power and cares only about himself. And I liked his reaction when he finally does meet Paul towards the end. He kind of shows him a bit of respect, it looked like, and acknowledges Paul's orders, so to speak. I really loved his duel with Paul. They kept it simple, it wasn't too long. It still was good to look at. And it also lacked any music, so you just hear, their grunting and the clashing of blades, kind of really a primal element. Zendaya plays Paul's love interest Shani, and I thought she and Timothée Chalamet, I thought they had okay chemistry. The filmmakers try to get you invested in their relationship to make it rough with all the hints that they might go in different directions away from each other. And lastly, but certainly not least, is our main character, Timothée Chalamet as Paul. And I felt like in Part 1 he kind of was a bit passive in that he actually didn't do a whole lot, really, and he just kind of went along with things that happened to him and his family. In Part 2 we see him start to become a leader that he actually fears becoming, because as in Part 1 he's plagued by these visions of possible futures where he comes to power and brings about war and death, as a result. And indeed, like the propaganda perpetrated by his mom and her Bene Gesserit order has some of the Fremen thinking that Paul might be their savior, and they start, giving him all these titles that I have fun sayings, Prisat Haderach, Lisan Al-Gaib, Muad'Dib. But on the other side, you have the other half of the Fremen who just see Paul as a, false prophet or even a spy. But with how things unfold, it seems there might not be any avoiding the destruction that Paul has foreseen, and whether or not it's just the destiny of him and the other characters. And this idea of Paul being either the chosen one or a false prophet kind of ties in with my favorite plot of the whole film, kind of overarching everything, is what would happen if Paul fulfills these prophecies and actually, leads the Fremen people. And he has some character flaws that only seem to get enhanced after certain events of the film, where he seems to act similar to like a cult leader. And with some of his thinking later on in the film, it really makes you wonder if it's, actually for the best, if these, good guys are winning. And my favorite scene of the whole film is, actually towards the end, where Paul fully asserts himself as the leader among the Fremen. And in that scene, the music kind of takes on like a sinister sound, and another trope here is, the tragedy of like a corrupted hero. And it's obvious the, influence that Dune has had on other stories, especially in, science fiction, mainly Star Wars. Despite all the triumphs of this film, it's not perfect. There are a few plot points involving some side characters that I would have liked to have seen more of a payoff or not be resolved so quickly. A couple of times things were building toward an event only for, said event to be over, fairly quickly. But the movie is already 2 hours, 45 minutes, and, most of the time has to be devoted to Paul and his story. That being said, this is about, peak science fiction, and I think I went for blockbusters as a whole, that I will give a 9 out of 10, and even though March just started, I can almost guarantee this will be like in my top 10 favorite films of the year. If not, we're in for one heck of a year for movies. I don't think I would go so far as to say like the movie ends on a cliffhanger, as I think it does tell a complete story, and that, we're here to see the beginning of Paul fulfill his destiny and begin his rise to power. But it certainly sets up several ways that the story to continue, and Denis Villeneuve has already expressed his desire to finish a trilogy, and although it hasn't been confirmed yet, I would be shocked if there isn't a sequel, whether, it's called Dune Part 3, or they name it after the second book in the series, Dune Messiah. I also found it interesting, the parallel with how Part 1 starts and how this film starts, that I will leave you to find out on your own. I don't want to spoil anything again. With that, I will bring this video to a close. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the little bell so you're not missing a thing. Also, I love to hear your thoughts on Dune Part 1 or Part 2. Let me know if you've read the books by Frank Herbert, or watched Dune 1984 or the SciFi series. Bye.